My name is Grace Cotter, and I graduated in 2020. And I've decided to write a letter to eanes ISD because I'm fed up with seeing the way that they handle anything out of their comfort zone, because I cannot keep my mouth shut anymore. Dear eanes ISD, there's so many things that I want to get out about the way my high school experience in this district was, but it would take hours. I'm making this video because I'm disgusted by the amount of ignorance the district has had towards the harassment their students have had to face at their school. Seeing adults straight up ignore students who are begging for them to do something to make their school safer is extremely disheartening and reminds me of my own case. I've kept quiet about my trauma for 4 years, never letting anyone but people I'm close to hear about it, but I am done feeling like I need to be ashamed for what happened to me. On August 26, 2016, I was sexually assaulted by another student. The experience left me feeling lost and confused. I knew that what had happened was wrong, but I didn't want to accept that it was real, and I pushed it down for almost a month. After keeping it in, I confided in a friend about what had happened to me, and he suggested going to the counselors for help. I went into the counseling office scared to death of what they would think of me, but I'd hoped they would at least be able to help me process what had happened and change my schedule because I had multiple classes with my abuser. I sat down and told the counselor what had happened. She told me that she would have to call my mom to report it to her, and I was terrified of my parents' reaction because I didn't want to disappoint them or make them sad, but I knew it was what I needed. After I told the counselor, it was like nothing had happened. I had to fight to get my schedule changed, and it was about another week before I was able to get it changed and not have to sit to the person that did this to me for 2 hours every single day. After telling the counselor, it was never brought up again by another staff member. No one referred me to a therapist, checked in with me, nothing. It was just swept under the rug. I learned 2 years later that the school is legally supposed to contact the police in these cases. In my case, they did not. Sophomore year, again, they put me in 2 classes with my abuser, and again, I had to go convince the counselors to change my schedule. I convinced myself that because the school acted like it wasn't a big deal, it probably wasn't, and I decided that I would force myself to forget it, which obviously did not work. I was able to force it out of my head most of the time, but after being invalidated by multiple people, I learned the best option for me to avoid getting hurt was to avoid ever speaking about it. This repressed trauma led me down a very dark hole of substance abuse, starting out with just weed and eventually getting into harder drugs. I was high almost all the time for most of high school and developed terrible social anxiety, and my depression worsened. Drugs were the only thing in the world that gave me true joy because when I used, I was able to numb out all of my emotions and forget everything that I was carrying 24/7. I stopped caring about myself and forgot what I was worth. I was constantly in trouble either at home or with the school and liked to take my inner anger out by starting huge blowout fights with anyone who wronged me in the slightest bit. I was absolutely miserable, and even though I had friends, I felt absolutely alone. My senior year this year was a very rough one. I developed a drinking problem due to the buildup of trauma that I had been repressing for years and years and years. And I ended up graduating early so that I could get into recovery and get sober. I'm now doing way better, and after being out of that toxic environment and drug-free, I finally feel some sense of self. My story is just one out of the many, many other students who've experienced any type of harassment or issues at school and have had it swept under the rug. For me, it has not just been my sexual assault case. I am bisexual and I had a girlfriend for 2.5 years, and the first year I was dating her, we had a group of guys who would target us constantly, harassing us in the hallways, yelling at us, all types of things. We had teachers yelling at us for hugging each other. Just little things like that that made me feel like I was not welcome, like I was not wanted. I had students make remarks to me saying I was known as the lesbian, all this stuff, like it was a bad thing. So I became very scared to express how I felt about my girlfriend at the time in front of anyone because of this treatment. We had an AP threaten us and say he was going to call our parents and tell them what we were doing. My girlfriend at the time was not out to her dad, and she had accepting parents, but if she didn't, it could have been dangerous, and that is sickening. It is a known fact between students that at Westlake, the most important things to the administration are money, their reputation, and football. Eanes ISD, I'm begging you to do something. Enough is enough. It is so hurtful to be wronged over and over again by the people that are supposed to be there to protect you. I'm asking you to please address everything that is going on right now and pay attention to the people who are brave and coming out and sharing their personal stories of racism at this school. My story is not related to my race at all, but I feel the pain of the many people who have been wronged by the staff at Westlake. Posting about being kind is not enough. That is not enough. We need harsher punishments for racism and bullying, and teachers to learn more about what is and isn't okay to say to students. You would think that this would be common sense, but the pattern of teachers behaving in a discriminatory manner towards students says otherwise. If you are watching this, I encourage you to reach out to the eanes district with any stories you have and a call to action. They cannot ignore us forever, and I refuse to give up until this is addressed. Thank you for listening.